Day number 3, I hope you've been enjoying yourself. The third day of me pushing my waistcoat and pocket square agenda on all of you. Next year, I really want more of you dressed like robots from Westworld, okay? So just work on that for me. We have a great final session here. I have one last story and a set of brilliant speakers. So let's just go ahead and get started. Let me put up the thing. This is 99% Invisible. I'm Roman Mars. US paper currency is so ubiquitous that to really look at its graphic design with fresh eyes requires deliberate and focused attention. So pull out a greenback from your wallet or just look at that beautiful thing up there. Really take it in. All the fonts, all the busy filigree, all the micro patterns. It's just dreadful.
From a pure designer's point of view, that's tough because it is a little bit subjective, but
it's horrible. There are like 8 fonts on this thing.
Typographically, graphically, symbolically, if it had never been designed before and someone was to submit that as a solution, I think that they would just sort of throw it out.
And I don't want to get too critical at this point because there are actually some pretty compelling and understandable reasons for its particular brand of horribleness, but I think the primary tension embodied in the design of the greenback boils down to how designer Tom Nelson puts it.
When I handle American money, it feels like an artifact because it's so ornate and it has an old look to it.
Even though paper currency itself is this world-changing massive technology, the look and feel of US paper money is very stagnant. It seems like a relic from when our country was founded.
Would you buy a car that would still look like the Model T Ford? No, you buy the latest model of it. Things evolve and change with time.
That's Richard Smith. He ran a contest called the Dollar Redesign Project.
It's become a classic, like classics do, through time and through usage and through familiarity. So its awkwardness from a design point of view has kind of been superseded by its symbolicness.
So, if we were to start from scratch and redesign US paper money, Smith says there are 5 major areas where we could improve. Number 1 is color.
The idea of using one color doesn't really tell you much other than that we like the color green.
Our largely monochromatic money kind of baffles me. We've introduced a purple 5 and some peachy hues, but there are a lot of colors in the world, and most countries use at least some of them. Number 2 is size.
Well, why is the American currency all one size? There's always been a question mark in my head, and just never really made sense practically and philosophically.
Having variable sized coins certainly helps us sort them, and use the same principle with bills. One second here. This is one of those great moments where I mess up. If you want perfection, listen to a podcast. I'm here. Excuse me. Okay, so having variable sized coins certainly helps us sort them, and we use the same principle with bills, which leads us to point number 3 in Smith's manifesto, functionality.
Some functionality that enables people, if they can't see, to clearly distinguish on a very sort of fundamental level which note is which.
The fact that there's no easy way for the blind to use our currency goes beyond bad design. It's actually immoral.
Then the next fundamental thing I thought was composition.
That's number 4.
Meaning, like, what's it made from? This is a little sort of conceptual into like where this could go, but it just seems that a product designer could come in and sort of come up with something really interesting.
Recycled material with a smaller carbon footprint or more durable synthetics that can last longer. And at the very heart of the Dollar Redesign Project is number 5, symbolism.
Who should go on the bills and why? Why are the founding fathers the be-all and end-all of everything that is America? And I think for me that's one of the biggest issues. If we were to change anything, I would say that would be where I would start. It could be a platform to celebrate everything that is unique, special, different, that you didn't know about America.
It's hard to imagine all those things being modified on US currency, but it's not hard to imagine each of them being implemented somewhere. In fact, most of them are implemented everywhere. Case in point, Australia. On the other side of the world, each and every one of these 5 issues has been coincidentally addressed.
Let me introduce a masterpiece of Australian design and technology. Australia's new $5 plastic note.
I'm really proud of our money. I have absolutely no idea why I'm so proud of it, but I really am.
That's Tristan Cook, and you're about to hear why he's so proud. Tristan and Tom Nelson here from briefly at the top of the show. They're user-centered designers, and they run a blog that I'm a fan of called Humans in Design. Tristan is Australian, Tom is American. But Tom went to school in Australia for a couple years, and the money there made a big impression on him.
The money is plastic, and they're all different sizes, and they're colorful.
At first, these changes were disconcerting.
It all just looked like toy money to me.
But after Tom's initial shock, he began to appreciate all the different design characteristics of Australian currency. First, the color.
$5 is sort of a lavender. $10 is blue with a little bit of a green stripe in it. 20 is...
When you look at the ways that you can tell the differences between things, generally it's called coding. That's the very simple human factors term for it. And you code through things like size, shape, feel, and color. So in Australian money, we have ours coded primarily by color.
Which in some ways is a better index because it doesn't require knowledge of who's on the bill. It only requires recognition of a color.
Or an association with a pineapple or a lobster.
It's not very common just yet, but we call our notes colloquial names by their colours, and my 2 personal favourites are calling the $20 note, which is sort of an orange colour, calling it a lobster, and calling the $50 note, which is a sort of a green and yellow colour, and calling it a piney, which is short for a pineapple.
It's all about the pineys. Okay, number 2, size.
The bills are also different sizes as well, so they feel different in your hand.
Sometimes when I've got a bit of cash in my pocket, I can tell the difference between a $5 note and a $20 note because of the feel.
I would say that it's about a centimeter difference between each denomination, which between a 5 and a 10 isn't that big, but between a 5 and a 50 is very big. So you get like 4 centimeters difference.
Both number 1 and number 2 relate to the 3rd issue raised by Richard Smith, and that's functionality.
You can see whether you've got a 5, a 10, a 20, or a 50 from the top of your wallet.
Because of the color and the size differences. Number 4, composition.
It's a thin sheet of plastic.
The polymer notes were developed primarily to combat counterfeiting.
Feels like plastic that you can fold and scrunch up. You can actually put it through the washing machine and it'll be fine.
If you drop a note on the floor of a men's room, you don't really feel bad about picking it up and putting it under the faucet before you put it back in your pocket. These plastic notes cost more, but they last longer.
They tend to last 4 times longer than fibrous paper notes.
So you get notes in Australia that are 20 years old and they pretty much just look the same.
What Australia chooses to put on their currency is more in keeping with what Richard Smith of the Dollar Redesign Project would like to see. It's much more inclusive than founding fathers and monuments. But it's hard to tell if these symbols are conveying much of anything to everyday Australians.
They don't put statesmen on money frequently. There are artists and poets and I think there are some Aboriginal leaders.
That's another thing too. You could not put prime ministers on our money. We don't have the reverence for prime ministers in Australia.
But most Australians couldn't name the people that are on their money.
I have absolutely no idea who is on any of our notes except for one side of the $5 note is the Queen, and that's just because I don't want her on there. I'd imagine if you ask any Australian if they know who is on their notes, there would be less than 1% of people who could name anybody other than the Queen.
The symbolism in Australian cash seems to be tied more to the innovation of the bills themselves. There's a certain pride that polymer bills were developed in Australia and have been exported to the rest of the world. Australia now manufactures the polymer notes of nearly 20 other countries.
It's a good business for them.
The good design of their currency itself is the overriding brand.
It's no ordinary note, however. It's Australia's new polymer $10 note. and it was developed and printed right here.
I would like to see American currency redesigned and treated more like a living piece of technology rather than an artifact.
I think even the most jingoistic among us could concede that there are design innovations that could be incorporated into US currency to make it better, but there are some interesting reasons why we probably won't.
You know, someone once told me that getting rid of the greenback would be like burning the flag on the steps of the Capitol.
It's a very dramatic statement by David Wolman.
My name is David Woolman. My book is The End of Money.
To a lot of people, our currency is a physical touchstone to our national identity.
Some of this is emotional, but there is this other concern that is simultaneously tantalizing and scary, I think.
And that other concern is that when you redesign the money, you remind people what currency really is and what gives currency its value.
And of course, what gives the currency value is our belief that it's valuable. And in the religious sense of it, nothing more than faith or trust or worship, whatever you want to call it, makes a dollar worth a dollar or worth whatever you're going to buy with it. So that is upsetting to a lot of people. And to maintain the aura of strength and stability of the United States economy,
it probably helps to maintain these legacy features in the design of our money.
Through what is now 3 or 4 generations, we've had the same color, I think, since like the Civil War.
The portraits, the engraved styling, the filigree, the legacy features convey stability of our currency. The currency on which all other currencies are hitched has to be stable.
So not only do we not redesign the stuff, but we don't pull older notes from circulation either. So we'll have reissues and redesigns of our cash, but you can still use the last generation design as legal tender.
In other countries, a complete redesign deprecates the old design. You're given a grace period to use it or exchange it, but after a certain date, the old currency is shredded by the central bank, and you can no longer spend any of the money that you have left. This has never been the case in the US.
You can even use an 18th century coin stamped with just the value of 2 cents to go buy something. You might want to be careful because that could be so stupid. It could be worth, $3,000 to a collector out there. But if you want to go spend it as 2 cents, you can. And again, this is part of creating this aura of super stability and inherent value of Federal Reserve notes.
David Wolman is quick to point out that even though these concerns of instability happen when people bring up the redesign of the money or eliminating the penny, he thinks it's pretty irrational and an overly cautious stance.
It seems to me a little bit patronizing to think that Americans couldn't handle a dollar redesign.
But really, who's there to push it forward?
If you're going to go and work in government, don't you almost by definition have some of that sense of patriotism and nationalism that would make you a little bit more inclined to like the greenback as is and a little less inclined to, let some RISD hotshots get after it?
He's making fun of you there. But still, primarily driven by anti-counterfeiting measures, U.S. currency has been pushed to change in recent years. And most of these new designs are why it looks worse than ever. The legacy features remain largely intact, but a layer of modern fonts and swirls make the bills look like they're busting at the seams. It's the worst of both worlds.
It's absolute chaos. There's very little that's elegant about our money from a design standpoint, as far as I understand.
But when I told David Wolman about my newfound discovery and appreciation of the Australian dollar as evangelized by Tristan and Tom, he was less than impressed.
I don't think it's that remarkable. Congratulations to the Aussies and the scientists who came up with polymer banknotes, and I think they profited well because of that innovation. But I'm just not convinced it's a very world-changing kind of thing. It's pretty.
I happen to think that pretty counts. But from his point of view, a better designed banknote, even a plastic one, is still just a piece of paper. I mean, his book is called The End of Money, after all. But he's more excited about digital currency that can help us be, wiser about how we use our money. But while we wait for the perfect digital solution, we will still probably have to endure the $20 bill with its wavy Six Flags amusement park font that says 20 USA in the background. You see it there? I mean, seriously, what the hell were they thinking? That font is even cruel to Andrew Jackson, and that dude committed genocide. That's our story for the day.